Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. Together, we are Kenny and Renny, and this is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after game, what's this, 78 of the season. Another loss for the Jets, who have just started the road trip off well, 6-game road trip, but did not end it at all the way they would like. In a game in which they were grossly outshot, beat 4-2. I know head coach Dave Lowry said he didn't think that the shot clock was indicative of that game. I did. I very much thought it was. There was a point early on. Again, the Jets doing a pretty good job with some opportunistic scoring, which we know they're very good at. I think they had 2 goals on their first 6 shots. And then it just seemed after that, the Carolina Hurricanes. I mean, if you want to know how good teams consistently win hockey games, that's how you do it. That team gets behind the Winnipeg Jets and they just keep pushing and they push and they push and they push and they don't stop. And it looked early on like Eric Comrie was going to steal that game for the Winnipeg Jets. He played good enough to steal it for the Winnipeg Jets. I think he kept them alive in that game for a long enough period of time that if the Jets, as a team could have woken up and pushed it a little bit harder offensively, then that's one of those games that you talk about being a win and that your goalie got you that win. I think Eric Comrie did everything that he possibly could. But that Carolina Hurricanes team is clearly a good team, clearly a Stanley Cup contender. And they did all the right things they needed to do, all the things that you would expect a good team to do to get back into that game and win that game. And I think that was acknowledged in the post-game comments by, Dave Lowry, by Eric Comrie, I think by Nate Schmidt as well. I think all 3 of them had said that's a good team over there. And it's something that I feel resonated with me a little bit in that I feel like we've been hearing that a lot from the Jets, talking about the other team being a good team. And I think if there's anything that's good about this 4-game losing streak that they've gone down the stretch here, where they just basically ran into some Ken and I have been talking about this trip for weeks. We knew this is how the season was going to end. The Jets needed to put themselves into a good position because it was very unlikely that they were going to, sweep this trip. It was probably unlikely they were going to go 50-50. Even if they were a really good team, it would have been hard to go, win half the games out of this 4-game stretch. But it seems to me if there's a good thing to come out of this and these 4 straight losses for the Jets, I think is that a candle has really been held up showing the difference, the complete and total difference between the best teams in the NHL right now and the Florida Panthers, New York Rangers, Carolina Hurricanes, and probably Tampa Bay Lightning would qualify as those teams. I think this has really held up a candle to the difference between where the Winnipeg Jets are at and where those teams are at. The Jets, I don't think, again, at the beginning of the year, they thought they were a Stanley Cup contender. I don't know that I'm convinced that it's just a matter of changing systems or coaching or that the personnel is there. I think that there's an upper echelon of teams, and I don't know that the Jets can claim, even if circumstances were as good as they could possibly be, are in that upper echelon of teams. But you know what? That's up for debate. And I know a guy who loves debates. Ken Wiebe loves debates, and he's got great music to come into the show to share those debates or to take his side on those debates. So let's bring him in here right now. Time to bring Kenny into the show. My main man, Kenny, haven't seen you since earlier in the day when we did our weekly long form show. It was a heck of a good show. James Patrick, the head coach of the Winnipeg Ice, we had on. He was an absolute, in hockey terms, he was a complete and total beauty. Was he not, Ken? He was something else, as was John Shabbat, who does, breaks downs and analysis for Hockey Night in Canada Cree, and had a phenomenal career, played with some absolutely unbelievable line mates over the course of his career. That was a ton of fun. We can talk about that kind of stuff later. Let's get back to the game here, though, Ken. What'd you see?
Yeah, I mean, we saw one of the best teams in the NHL today on display, and that is the Carolina Hurricanes. We've been talking about them for the last couple of years. It was an important build for them. Do I think that this was the Jets' best effort of the four? Yes. Maybe even, certainly to a degree. I thought their work was fine. They certainly built themselves a 2-0 lead, and even though Eric Comrie had to stand tall in order to do so. But I mean, at one point, the Carolina Hurricanes cranked it up, and the Jets didn't have much of an answer in terms of what they were able to generate offensively. Sure, a good chunk of the shots came from the outside, but I don't think this is one of those situations where the Jets could say they spent a ton of time in the Hurricanes' end and generated a ton of chances. They certainly were not goalied in this game. The reason why the game was close was because of Eric Comrie making 42 saves. So certainly saw effort, and you wonder what you're going to see when a team is officially eliminated, as the Jets were last night. With the technically not last night because the Vegas Golden Knights won, but because Vegas and Dallas will play on Tuesday, I believe it is. So somebody's getting 2 points in that game, so they can't be caught. So regardless, no matter how you want to draw it up on the old mathematics equation, Jets are down and out.
Well, and if they hadn't been, they would have killed themselves tonight. Everything would have been
either way. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, again, are the Jets at a situation right now? What you want to see is effort, and we did see effort. Execution maybe lacking a little bit. There were some nice plays made. Kyle Connor scoring his 44th goal of the year. That ties Patrick Laine for the most scored in Jets 2.0 history. Pierre-Luc Dubois, for the folks that have been on him for 1 goal in the last 13, he's up to 27, which ties a career high for him. Can he get to 30 before the year is over? We'll see. Again, I mean, Dubois doesn't really care about empty calorie points, but the facts that the matter is that he has 27 goals this year. And as a guy who is looking for a new contract, hitting that nice round number would be something that he would probably like to look at. And that was a great goal by him. And it was a really good setup. And the goal by Connor is exceptional. I mean, it's a great effort all the way up the ice. He's battling with Anthony DeAngelo, basically battles him the whole time. Second effort, third effort, fourth effort, fifth effort, then gets to the blue paint, and somehow the net is wide open and no one is covering his stick. So, impressive job there, and really nice shot by Dubois. But I mean, Sean, to me, this just exaggerates the fact that what we talked about last game. I want Kyle Connor playing with Pierre-Luc Dubois, not just a 4-on-4 where the goal was scored. Again, if you're looking at building culture and looking at things for next year, I mean, that's something that should be on your board for day one of training camp, right? I mean, those two side by each, and if you want to roll somebody full time, whether it's a Cole Perfetti or Nikolai Ehlers or whoever, those two guys should be playing together right now. And, I don't want to go to the buffet too long here, but I want to see Dylan Samberg killing penalties. Good that he was back in the lineup, Sean. But what is the value of having, whether it's Nate Schmidt or Josh Morrissey, we know what those guys can do on the penalty kill. We always hear, what do we hear from coaches? Oh, that guy's too inexperienced to be on the special teams. Well, right now is a great time to have Dylan Samberg on the penalty kill. He did it momentarily. I think the first time that he came in for Logan Stanley, we saw him on the penalty kill, and he did a nice job there. So to me, these 5 games here, or now 4, are a great opportunity to get a guy's feet wet at that level so that you can lean on him early next season when he's trying to become an NHL regular. So those are just a couple of quick things here. I mean, we got a lot to get to, obviously. We're going to definitely be speaking about Blake Wheeler in a moment, but I'm going to step away with my plate. And before I do, just an exceptional episode today. Sean, we talk about this all the time, folks. That's our 15th long-form episode of Season 2, and they're not time-sensitive. I mean, yes, we know the Winnipeg Ice are opening their playoff series against Prince Albert Raiders on Friday night at the Wayne Fleming Arena, but what we talked about with James Patrick is not going to be outdated by the time you get to the weekend. So if you didn't have
No.
time today, get after it. And again, all 15 of those episodes I think you're going to enjoy. But just awesome stuff from John Shabbat and also from James Patrick today. So before we really dig in here on some of the other issues, I just wanted to reiterate that as well. And folks, you won't be disappointed if you invest the time like our guests invested in us today.
Well, do you want to take care of some sponsorship right now, Ken, or we'll do that in a little
let's
bit.
do it.
How about,
Yeah,
do you want to do that right now?
Yeah. Let's go. We know
it's
summer's around the corner. The weather's improving. You and I have our mortgages locked up with our good friends and fellow members at Cambrian Credit Union, but we both know a lot of folks getting ready for house hunting. 'Tis the season. If you are looking at buying a home, it's a good idea to know what you can afford and to get pre-approved. Getting pre-approved for a mortgage is a key step so that when that perfect home comes up, you're ready to take full advantage of it. Apply to get pre-approved for a mortgage at cambrian.mb.ca.
Yeah, we did it last year. We re-upped with them. That's our second go around with them. They've been phenomenal. So good stuff. One thing I've learned from doing the show the last little while is that people love my crazy out there theories, and I don't think they're crazy out there. I think they're good, thoughtful theories, and so I like to throw them out there. I guess I throw them out there because I'm not necessarily saying it because of anything anyone said. I think I'm trying to put myself through the mindset of the people making those decisions. And so you were talking about Kyle Connor and PLD not being on the same line together, and I agree with you. I've said this before. I think that PLD has brought out the best version we've ever seen of Kyle Connor, and vice versa. That's happened. But I wonder, Ken, if what we saw in splitting those two up had everything to do with the fact that maybe Dave Lowry believes in this moment in time that these are his two best players. And if you go by the old Paul Maurice idea of, drivers, that maybe, just maybe, he thought in an effort to try and get a couple wins down the stretch here against some good teams, that he thought it was best to take his two biggest drivers and split them up to see if they could get some other lines going. I know exactly what you're saying. I think they should be playing together, but I think that there may be a hidden compliment in there for both those players saying, I know you do best together, but right now you're the best that we have, and dividing you, a la the kind of the theory behind, and I'm not comparing these two players to these two players, but the whole Draisaitl McDavid thing, I've said you're winning if you're forcing those two onto the same line because you can concentrate on them. That team gets better when they teach them to play apart from each other. I'm not saying the Jets need to do that, but I guess what I am saying is it's maybe, in my mind, a compliment to those two players that we need you each driving a line to try and create some depth and scoring for us.
Oh, it's definitely a compliment to both of them, but my problem with the theory is that Nikolai Ehlers doesn't need help driving his own line. And in fact, he drives his own line usually almost all the times. And we also know that Ehlers flourishes with Paul Stastny when they play together. So I don't think that they need Kyle Connor on that line to drive the line. I think Kyle Connor should be driving the line with Pierre-Luc Dubois, and then they can go from there. Obviously, if you want to play Ehlers on that line, fine, no problem at all. But my issue is that there are two guys they have explosive speed. One of them is a straight line player and one is an east-west player. So again, much like when Scheifele and Ehlers, when it's going well, it's magical. But when it's not, then you just have two really fast guys, and sometimes they don't know where the other guy is going to be. So again, I'm totally fine if you split them up, but then play Ehlers with Dubois. You don't need to play Ehlers and Connor together. And I'm not saying it can't work, but it doesn't have to work. And what we know works is Dubois and Connor. So I would just prefer to keep them together, because even though they've had great chemistry this year, they still don't have a really long stretch of it. So if you're talking about building all the time, the building part is still important for those two guys to continue to build together. So I'd like to see them together more. And then kind of go from there. But I understand the point about trying to get the drivers, but if you're trying to stretch the lineup, I don't think that that's an optimal use of that forward group. That's all I'm saying.
Fair enough. I will say this. I don't think we see that move happen if Mark Scheifele had remained in the lineup.
Right.
I do think there were times when that Scheifele Ehlers pairing were starting to turn into challenging to be the best line on the team on some nights. Maybe not defensively, but clearly offensively they were clicking when they were together. And I don't think that move happens without Mark Scheifele going out of the lineup. And I do think that the impetus for that is is not looking at those two players and saying, what you're doing isn't working. It's looking at those two players and saying, you guys are the best that we have, the best chance that we have at driving these lines. So let's make sure. Yeah.
One quick one for my friend Kenny's water bottle. That's not what I said.
No,
I said it hasn't always worked. It doesn't mean that
Listen
they don't
up.
have to work. They always have to work. It hasn't worked as effectively as you would expect from two high-end talents, is what I'm saying.
I learned something really interesting about Kenny's water bottle. Usually he's all over me. I've thought that he was a plant. Like I thought that maybe like someone in your family had named themselves Kenny's water bottle, and they'd come on the show and attack me and say, oh, Kenny's right. And Sean's always wrong. So this is the first time I think Kenny's water bottle has ever turned on you, Ken. And I got to say, I love it. Bring it on. Bring more of it. I want to see more of it, Kenny's water bottle. I'm going to drive a wedge between the two before we do.
No, you won't. No, you won't.
Before we get going here, I want to bring out the slick banner that the Johnson Group has provided us and just thank them once again for their contributions to our show. You won't find two businesses with the same challenges, but you will find 30,000 businesses with Chambers Plan employee benefits proudly administered by our friends at Johnson Group. Chambers Plan is Canada's #1 plan for employee benefits because it evolves with the way you work and live. The plan is run as a not-for-profit designed specifically to support small businesses, and its unique pooling strategy keeps rates stable so you won't have any surprises at your next renewal. Chambers Plan now comes with professional consulting on key financial, legal, and HR issues, and Teladoc telemedicine services are included with every health option. See how Chambers Plan can benefit your business by visiting chamberplan.ca. And I got to say, I've been thinking a lot about Matty Johnson. I know he's a big Jets fan, so this is going to be killing him. But the fact that it's killing him and then the snow keeps piling up outside and he can't get out onto the golf course, I don't know how he must be beside himself at this moment. Two of the biggest loves of his life right now aren't treating him very well. And speaking of, I know
he's keeping himself busy. Matty and his wife Jane had a beautiful baby recently, so he's his time on the golf course it will be coming, but he's keeping himself busy enough.
Cheers to Matty. That's good. Exactly. Excellent stuff. I did want to. Oh, geez, I lost my train of thought on that. So let's
go to Conry right away. Let's go to.
Sorry. Before we do Conry, I just wanted to bring this up. You and I were out at an event last night. Our good friend Mitch Peacock is moving to Calgary. Everyone will remember Mitch from his time at CBC, and he was Hockey Night in Canada rinkside host. Did phenomenal work, called Moose Games for a while. He's moving to Calgary with his wife. His daughter is kicking butt out playing soccer at the university level out on Vancouver Island. And I got flack when I was there because on the podcast here on this space, I was calling for more snow. And I know a lot of people weren't happy about that. But Ken, we are like literally this far away from going to 4th place on the list of the snowiest winters ever, that far away from 4th and that far away from 3rd. I want that 3rd place spot. I want it. It's like 2 centimeters, and it sounds like we may get snow on Sunday. So for all of you who are mad at Renny for hoping for more snow, he's still hoping for it. I see it in the forecast. Could happen on Sunday. Let's get that record, and then let the sun come out and melt it all and move on with our lives. Let's go to Conry.
Come on, that's a wake up for you. No more snow.
That's wake up.
Get it out of here. Get it out of here.
Name in the history books, Ken. You know what people always remember? They remember numbers. That's why it's important. Let's put up some big numbers here, and then we can tell our grandkids about it. Say, hey, we lived through that year.
We already got the flood of 97. We've got enough. We don't need any more snow. Let's go.
Okay. I don't know why Jeff Monk is asking me, did I watch the game? I'm not sure what he's got a problem with. Maybe he can let me know where he thinks I'm going so wrong that he thinks I didn't even watch the game. But you go with Conry. I want you to just take it and run with it.
Sure. This is very simple to me, and I understand people are up in arms and going crazy. And here's the quick synopsis. The overhead view makes it look as though there was contact from Seth Jarvis, but the back view from behind the net. This is the sequence of events. The shot hits Eric Comrie in the mask. As soon as that happens, the left-handed strap comes loose at the back. A goaltender's natural reaction is to head shake when that happens. We've seen Connor Hellebuyck do it multiple times. I even asked Eric Comrie about it. It's not that he wanted to, but when the strap loosens, Comrie looks down to try to find where the puck is, and he can't see because his mask has come down over his eyes. So as he's looking for the puck, he does the snap back to shake his mask off, and that's the exact moment when Seth Jarvis, who is outside the blue paint, even though Comrie's skates are in the blue paint, that's when Comrie sees the puck down. There is, I think, some incidental contact, but this isn't a guy bowling over the netminder, even though from the one angle it looks obvious. It looks actually like Jarvis rips Comrie's helmet off, but that's not at all what happened. And Comrie said it himself. He felt the goal should have counted. He was not in any danger. Here's my issue. It's not goalie interference. So the challenge portion is called correctly. But if the referee is in position below the goal line, he sees that the strap is off and that the helmet is coming off, and then he blows the whistle accordingly before Jarvis gets to the loose puck and jams it in. So it's not goalie interference, but I also think the play should have been blown down before the opportunity for the goal happens. So that's how I saw it. So I know a lot of folks are up in arms about the rule and what happened. But to me, the only way this thing gets, is called correctly on the ice is if the referee is lower on the play than he was. You can see Dave Minuk posted it on Twitter, a replay of the goal. The referee starts well in front of the goal line as the sequence is occurring. So if he were behind the goal line, he would have. There's no way for him to see the strap is even loose before the helmet shake happens. So I'm not saying it was called correctly, but the challenge portion is called correctly. I also understand why the Jets challenged it in the first place. It's a go-ahead goal in a tie hockey game, and it looks from the one angle like there was contact. So it was worth the risk at the time. So the big issue, folks, it's not goalie interference, but it is something that could have been called. But the thing that we have to also realize, you can't challenge on the play that the goalie's helmet came off. So that is unchallengeable. Goalie interference is challengeable, but it wasn't actually goalie interference. If there was contact, it was incidental contact with Jarvis being outside of the blue paint. And it's even possible, again, if I look back again, Nate Schmidt may have pushed from behind in that play as well. So that's the situation in that situation. So I don't think it was called incorrectly in terms of the challenge, but the portion that people want called can't be challenged.
Well, and so here's what I'm going to say to this. You'd said you're not saying that it was called correctly. I'll go ahead and say I do think it was called correctly, and Infinity Comet has it nailed right here. My buddy Dwighty, who's the AAA coach of the Eastman midget team, was texting me, and we were kind of going back and forth about this. But the rule does state the other team is supposed to get the Jets needed to get possession of the puck in order for the whistle to go. Now, that does not mean that if a goaltender loses his helmet and the referee looks at the situation and thinks to themselves, this player is in danger, then they can blow the whistle if they're worried about him taking a puck to the head or something like that. But the shot, and I know someone is sitting here saying Seth Jarvis took his head off. Seth Jarvis didn't take his head off. The puck hits his mask. That's what pops the strap on the back. Yeah. He kicks it off, and in the movement of his head, moves his head into the space where Seth Jarvis is getting pushed by Nate Schmidt at the same time. So the contact there is by no means Seth Jarvis crashing the net. And then the puck lands in a spot where it's on the ice in a scoring position, and he puts the puck in the net. Comrie himself said he thought that goal should have counted. Comrie himself had no problem with that. To me, that is a perfectly called play. Now, if Comrie had fallen back and a bunch of people were crashing the net, then the ref should blow that whistle. If there's any point at all where it looks like Comrie is in danger, that whistle should be blown. I just never saw that. Comrie didn't see it himself. I to be honest, Ken, was a little bit surprised that the Jets, and I do get this, Dave Lowry said about it, they battle for their goaltender, and you could tell that was appreciated by Comrie that they had tried for it, but I don't think there was goaltender interference there either, because you found a player that was sandwiched in between the goaltender and the defender. The defender is pushing the player in a direction, so he's not, I mean, not like he didn't throw himself at Comrie or anything like that. He threw himself to try and get to the puck, and on the way by did make some incidental contact with his elbow and the head, but I don't think it was a dangerous play. To me, this is no harm, no foul, because the person involved in this, I know as Jets fans, people are sore because it ends up being a goal that costs them. But the very person at the center of this play, who people are arguing should be protected in this, feels like he was protected and feels like the right call was made. And as the rule book states, go read the rule. Everything that you saw happen on the ice goes accustomed to what the rule book suggests.
Sure. What I would just counter with that, I mean, everything that you said is true, but I know this also happens in real time, and folks that get to watch it 5 or 6 different times in slow motion replay. My concern about that not being blown down, and I know it doesn't have to be by rule, what if Eric Comrie makes a play suddenly to try to prevent the rebound and the puck hits him in the head? You can't have that happening.
No.
That's why I want it blown dead when the shake happens. I'm not saying, whatever. I'm not saying it was bad or anything else, but that's why I want it blown dead. I mean, it used to be players could play without their helmet, right? Now you have to go off the ice. The goalie has no chance to go to the bench. So when his mask comes off, I want it blown down. And I don't care who it happens to, what team, what not. But again, I think that in that, you can't assume where the puck is going. But again, of course, it went to a safe place and Jarvis banged it home, which is what he did. He got to the hard area, then found the puck. But my concern with that not being blown down because you're waiting for a change of possession is that somehow Comrie gets himself in place to block the rebound, and then that rebound shot hits him in the head, and now you have a real problem. So that's why I want it blown down.
I'm entirely on board with you. If you bring a sheet and say, let's get some signatures and say we should take this to the league, that for the safety's sake, I'm 100% on board with you.
But that's not the rule right now, right? That's not the rule right now.
And so this is what I'm saying right here. To Isaiah Bruce says, Isha Boy Bruce says, should have been called dead as soon as the helmet came off, period. Should have. I don't know if he's saying this is what the rule should have stated, because the rule does not state this. But if he's saying it should have, as in this is what the rule should be, I agree with him 100%. What happened in the game, though, was entirely in line with the rules. Now, I'll say this: if we go back to that game against Chicago, and I'm all about this, because I'm all for player safety in this situation, so I'll sign up for that. We had this conversation, Ken, when Fleury, the last time they played Chicago, lost his glove. Yep. And Kyle Connor took a shot right where his glove would have been, knowing that he can't stop that puck. And Fleury's instincts, to your point about what could potentially happen for a goaltender, your instincts take over and you do something. Fleury's instinct was to try and glove that puck out of the air, and he just missed it. But had he not, we may not be talking about, the Minnesota Wild and Fleury making some kind of run or returning to the playoffs again, because his hand could have been shattered and that was it. That's a player safety situation. But I'm not, by no means am I saying a glove and the helmet are the same thing. And we can debate and argue about whether or not it should be a glove and a helmet or it should be any goalie equipment. But this is a similar kind of situation. The refs allowed that play to continue because the Jets were on the precipice of potentially scoring a goal, and they don't want that opportunity taken away from them. That's the exact same way the refs are looking at this. That's the lens they're looking at it through. If we want to change things, fine, I'm all for that. But what happened in the game was entirely what the rules dictate should have happened. They got that call right as far as the rule book suggests. People want to talk about Harks and Svetch's ice time. Let's get to that, because 4:31, someone wrote in the chat room for Harks, 3:59 for Svetch. It seems odd to me, Ken, down the stretch, to have such little deployment for those players in a situation like this. There is literally nothing left for the Jets to play for other than for a good feeling in the dressing room and trying to get your players going and trying to play. I don't know if this says something about the future of these two players in with this team. I think I'm being highly dramatic by saying that. I don't mean to be dramatic, but I do not get leaving two players on the bench for the vast majority of the game in a situation like this when there's really nothing at stake. What did you take away from it?
Yeah, I mean, first period especially, I think it was 54 seconds for Harkins, 51 for Svechnikov, and I know there's five minor penalties in the first period, so I mean that's 10 minutes of special teams time with neither one of those players plays on. So
Right.
I understand why in the first period the minutes were down. I would counter. Another one of the big problems is on that shift, Svechnikov drew a penalty. He would have had an open chance. He was basically tackled on the play by Jordan Martinick. So, I mean, this is what you think. If you're a fourth liner, you need to be moving right away, right? So, and he was moving. So he drew a penalty right away. You're feeling good about your ice time. You had a good shift, and now you're basically sitting for the entire period. That's incredibly hard to do to get yourself ready for the second. But Sean, I'm with you. I mean, there's no reason whatsoever the Jets shouldn't be playing their fourth line. Having four lines is essential, especially when you're playing a tenacious
Yeah.
team like
Yeah.
the Carolina
Yes.
Hurricanes, who
What a
make
good
it
point.
so difficult in terms of back pressure and the way that they defend. And they put you on your heels defensively. So you want an energy kind of a shift. Yes, I know it's hard to provide energy when you haven't been moving, but that you got to get them in the rotation sooner. And like you said, I mean, this is not stat padding time. And yes, everything they're talking about trying to build culture and everything else, um, fine. But the Jets, one of the biggest problems for 8+ seasons now, the Jets need to play their fourth line. They can't play them 5 minutes or fewer. They need to be at five to even, I would even argue, you got to get them towards 10 minutes, especially moving forward when you have a 35-year-old captain and a 36-year-old center who's playing in the top six. And that's not a knock on those two players who are in good shape and have done a good job this year. But you're just not setting yourself up for sustained success. And Sean, the biggest problem, we won't see it this year because it won't matter because they won't play beyond the 82 games. If you want to, never mind the 82 games, if you're a team that wants to be a contender, you need to win 16 more games
Yeah.
and play another 2 to 3 months. So I understand the Jets have lots of high-end guys who want to play a lot. You know who else wanted to play a lot? Alex Ovechkin. When the Capitals won the Stanley Cup, Ovechkin wasn't playing 25 minutes a game where he spent 4 minutes floating. He was playing 18 minutes because Barry Trotz knew he was going to need him for 3 more months. So that's a big issue for me when it comes to the Winnipeg Jets. And Dominic Toninato works his behind off, Sean. He's
Hmm.
had a good year in a lot of areas. But I think Dominic Toninato is a 13th forward, a guy that you can plug and play and isn't guaranteed a lineup spot. He does a nice job on the penalty kill. That's why he's in the lineup. But this is where what we've talked about before. David Gustafsson should be getting some minutes late in the year. I don't agree with what Dave Lowry said this morning. And again, that could change during the homestand. I totally disagree. It is a chance for those guys to be auditioning. And I understand
Yeah.
that he got injured twice this year and both were fluke injuries. I would argue too, Sean, David Gustafsson did exactly what Dave Lowry was asking his players to do. He went to the net and crashed into the post. That's how he got injured one of the two times. So that's not a lazy injury. That's totally a fluke injury. So this is the baffling. We've talked about this a lot. And again, I understand some fans wonder, well, the Jets must not believe in David Gustafsson. Well, that's also not true. If they didn't believe in Gustafsson, he wouldn't play 20 minutes and in all situations with the Moose. But next year, David Gustafsson has to be the Jets' fourth line center. And if you have Gustafsson and maybe Morgan Barron, and whether it's Svechnikov or somebody else, if Svechnikov is playing higher in the lineup, that's a line you can play to 8 to 10 minutes a game. You can have Gustafsson on the penalty kill. I mean, from what I've seen with Morgan Barron, I think he has the smarts to become a really good penalty killer. Don't you? I mean, this is a guy who gets around the ice well. He's smart. So, of course you can play. So then you got two of your fourth liners now on special teams instead of one out of the three. And if the third guy is Svechnikov, try Svechnikov on the second power play. We know he can shoot it. He's not afraid to go to the net. give him a shot there. Then you have a fourth line you can use, and then you can spread out the minutes a little bit more. And I'm not talking about even distribution, but I'm talking about you don't have to play one line 20 minutes and the other line 5 minutes. And again, I'm not knocking Toninato. I just believe that David Gustafsson has more offensive upside while still supplying defensive coverage and a conscience. So to me, Gustafsson is not a downgrade. He's a younger version who has a lot of good skills and probably has more offensive upside. So that's why I want to see more of David Gustafsson. And you know what? If I don't see it more this year, it's fine because he's going to have a great playoff and he's going to give the Jets no choice but to put him on the team next year.
So to me, I was a little surprised when Dave Lowry made that comment earlier today that they're not auditioning anyone. He made it sound like they knew what they had. And to me, that it blew my mind a little bit, to be honest. And there's no bet. I mean, I think it's a whole bunch of players we could add in this, but you bringing up David Gustafsson is important because that is the one thing we don't really have an idea of what this extra year. He spent some time up with the Jets last year. He's got some NHL games under his belt. He didn't show in that time anything that was eye popping that we were saying you need to keep this guy around.
End to end on Karlsson for his first NHL goal. That was, I would say that part was eye-popping. It was only one shift, but I mean, I know what you're saying. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
It's the same thing as Morgan Barron, right? Morgan Barron had that. The one thing I've learned from covering this sport, when I was a fan, I used to get really excited. You know, I told this story before about Lonnie Bahanis, a Winnipeg boy, that one year with the Leafs, and he was on a really good line. He did good in the playoffs. So I thought if you can do that in the playoffs, you can do it any time of the year. This guy is an NHLer for years. Let's go. You know what I mean? And what I did realize is like the toughest thing about the NHL is consistency, right? Everyone can have a good night. So we've seen Morgan Barron went off one night, and I think there was a lot of people right off the bat were like, "This is what we got. This is great. We won the Andrew Ladd trade, you know." And here we go. By the way, we got to get into it and talk about it. Like the efforts at the trade deadline. This is just a little sidebar. The efforts at the trade deadline to move Kopp but bring in pieces that were going to take Kopp's place. I think we've seen enough to know that did not happen. Like the Sanford and Barron and Appleton do not add up to what Andrew Kopp did in this lineup. And now I've gone and totally shot myself in the foot because I forgot what we're talking about here in the first place. But yeah, to get back to the point about
Morgan
Gustafsson.
Barron.
Well, no, we were talking about Morgan Barron. He went out that one
yes.
game. Just like you said, Gustafsson had a really nice goal. I'm not saying he's shown absolutely nothing, but he did not look like a player that you were saying you cannot send this guy down anymore. But after an off season, it would have been interesting to see what he did. Okay, well, after the off season and some time with the Moose, it would be interesting to see where his game is right now. And either the Jets have a really, really good idea of what their Moose players can do at the NHL level, and they feel like they don't need to bring those guys up and put them in those spots, or I'm not sure I'm buying what they're saying, because if you don't need in these last 5 games to bring up David Gustafsson and see how he handles a pressure test with the Calgary Flames coming down the pipe here or the Colorado Avalanche, to me, it's kind of like, what's the point? I mean, what is to gain down the stretch here other than trying to get a good feeling in the room of playing this same old lineup? And by the way, trying to get that good feeling in the room, how's that working out? I never got to ask the question because they were in a hurry today, but Nate Schmidt is the most positive guy you have ever met in your entire life. But boy, oh boy, was he down in the post-game presser today. And I'd asked Dave Lowry about the mood of this team. And to me, it's tough right now. And I don't even think it's just them missing the playoffs. Like, I think missing the playoffs is one thing. The year is the other thing, the frustration. But like the way that they've kind of been outclassed these last 4 games against these really good teams, I think it's wearing on them. I think Nate Schmidt's comments made that evidently clear. And so if your idea down the stretch is, are they just going to keep playing this same lineup, hoping that, when they play Seattle, they get a win, and Philadelphia, they get a win, and then maybe they can go into the offseason with a little bit of a good feeling? Because I don't get the strategy at all. I don't get not playing the young players. I don't get throwing everyone together here when this is garbage time. It doesn't matter. Right now, it just seems to me like the Jets are getting knocked down and down and down and further, and their confidence is eroding. And I just don't know that going into the offseason with a couple wins against Philly and Seattle, Seattle is going to fix that. I'd rather see David Gustafsson go up against some stiff competition and see what he can do in his last 5 games. So it's not a question mark when he come into camp next year.
Yeah, and the big thing too, again, just like I said about Dylan Samberg. So when David Gustafsson comes to the NHL, initially he will be a fourth-line center who has to kill penalties. So give him the reps in those last games, right? What is the harm of giving him reps against Seattle and Philadelphia so that when you put him out next year, Sean, in game 1 of the regular season, he feels comfortable. We know he does it at the minor league level, and he's confident in his ability to do so. But if you give him some late season reps, not only does it help him feel good come October, it gives him a tremendous boost when he gets ready for the Calder Cup playoffs, when he's going to be asked to try to win important draws and kill, in a 5-on-3 situation or any of those things. I mean, I just think it's a missed opportunity. You know what the ceiling is for Dominic Toninato, and he works his behind off. He's done the best he's had. He's done well in his role, but you don't know what Gustafsson can do, and that's why I want him to be playing. You don't have to play. I would like to see Ville Heinola for those games, but just get him a couple of those games. Again, you want him feeling confident first. The other part, Sean, we talk about this all the time with coaches. Providing that carrot, it means a lot to those guys, right? And Dave Minuk from Legal Curve used Leon Gavanka as a great example. Gavanka is a guy who will not be waiver exempt next year. That's not to say he's going to be claimed on waivers, but he's a guy that you haven't tried. Declan Chisholm got a chance. He's coming back from injury. Kovacevic has played already. What's the harm in giving Gavanka a chance? And again, I'm not saying give the 12th or 13th player on the roster a chance. Give a guy a shot just to see if he can get a taste. But again, I'd rather, no offense to Gavanka, I'd rather see Heinola get a few more games before the year is over, because we expect Heinola to be in the 6 next year. And it would take, a wide variety of things happening for Gavanka to be on the team next year. But anyways, I agree with you. To me, I understand everything that they're saying about wanting to build culture, but you're building culture with people you want to have part of your program moving forward. So anyways, I think that could change, and we still might see Gustafsson before the year is over, but if they don't, I think it's a missed opportunity, plain and simple.
Yeah. You know what? We should get into this, Ken. I think the news of the day, regardless of what happened in the game, was the press conference this morning with Blake Wheeler. You wrote a really, really good article. Someone was giving you props, and rightfully so. You did a really good job bringing that article out. Give me your take on what we heard from Blake Wheeler earlier today, because I thought I can't remember the last time a press conference was handled as well as that.
Yeah, it was impressive, quite frankly. And I know we've had the discussion, and a lot of fans and chat room folks have been talking about wanting to see more from Blake Wheeler. And today you saw Blake Wheeler leading at a podium. The most important thing Blake needs to do is lead on the ice. But today he took a very, I thought, insightful and informative approach to a situation that, quite frankly, I took a lot, like Jeff Hamilton likes to tell us, and when he's on with Hustler, the reason why I raised my hand early to get the first question in with Blake is because until the question is asked, you don't know if you're going to get combative Blake or angry Blake or short, like curt Blake, and you don't know if he's going to engage. But as soon as I asked him about the missing out on the playoffs, you could tell very early in that answer that he was going to be reflective. I thought it set a very important tone for the 10 minutes of the conversation, that Blake took that approach. I thought it was very important for him to do so. And in a lot of ways, Sean, I think it was even more important because of what we had heard from other players expressing their frustration and disappointment. I thought it was essential for Blake to take so much responsibility and to address culture. And, flat out, for all the people who think Blake doesn't speak so he doesn't care, you got everything that you needed to hear from the captain of the Winnipeg Jets. his absence does not mean he stopped caring or that he's checked out. He's just so pissed off about what has happened. He doesn't want to sit at the podium and talk about it. And that's the other part about Blake that's part of the package, is that even though he didn't want to dig deeper and drill into some of the details, you know darn well that he has opinions on those other subjects that he doesn't want to dig into because the emotions are so raw. Because he doesn't. Blake lives by this, axiom: if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. And right now, honestly, that's
no, he doesn't. He says not nice stuff
about his team. Sorry, about his team, Sean. Not about
his own. Yeah, for sure.
About his own lot in life. Sorry about that. So, again, does this mean that I didn't want to hear this side of Blake more often? No, but I don't think you could. I totally get it. I mean, you see that and you want it all the time. But Blake's just not wired that way to provide that, to let you stare deep into his soul every time he gets to the podium. But I certainly was appreciative of what we saw today. And I thought it was absolutely essential for him to speak on the day that the Jets were eliminated. And I thought that it's hard to imagine him handling that situation better. But again, ultimately, it's going to depend on how this team moves forward. But to me, Sean, I saw a guy who wanted to be part of the solution. And that's an important thing, not only for Jets fans to hear, like what you always say, the captain, should be delivering a message to the fans. He went out of his way to say that it was important to play hard for the fans in those last 4 games. I thought that it was important to say that publicly so that his teammates know that's how I'm not saying his teammates probably know how he feels, but the way he expressed himself to me sounded like someone who wanted to be part of the solution and wasn't checked out or wanting to go elsewhere.
I'm going to weigh in on this, but first, it's been called for a number of times. So let's get down to this. I need to hear some good music to spice up this conversation. So let's make this a Sean's headband version of the Kenny and Renny show. I noticed Mr. Agfa 100 was saying that the headband should be retired earlier on. So he's hating every minute of this, but there's too many people were asking for it. So I had to do it. I had to do the Sean's headband get in here. So let's launch into this now. So I thought there's going to be some people who are saying, I saw someone earlier say Blake Wheeler didn't say much. I don't agree with that. Like if you take a look at the comment that he made, it's a real raw, honest thing to say. It feels like we're starting at square one. Like, what did we talk about on the last podcast, Ken? Like, what if I think there's this feeling in Jets land that this is like a down year? And I saw them talking about, I think Jeff O'Neill was talking about it on the TSN panel this year. It was just saying like, oh, it's a down year. You take it and you come back and whatever. But what if it's not? And I am a believer that there's a lot of things that are systematically wrong in this organization that need to be addressed, that haven't been addressed for a while, that have been having this organization trending in this decision or in this direction. So I don't necessarily believe that and I do think that they're at risk of being a franchise that this isn't the first year that they missed the playoffs. I think it's going to be tough for them to do it next season as well. So for him to come out and say that, Blake Wheeler came out and said something no one else in this organization, I believe, has said. And it takes courage to come out and say something like that, because if that's how he feels, to me, that's honesty. So he said something. The rest of it is the stuff, and I know there's people in here saying, that he probably got coached. I'm sure he got coached. Blake Wheeler said all the things that a captain should be saying in this situation. It's raw. Culture was talked about by other players, and it wasn't, the question was asked and saying the culture was bad. I forget how Scotty asked the question. It wasn't exactly what Kyle Connor had said. Kyle Connor had said it's never too early to start improving your culture. Well, I take that as him saying the culture needs to be improved, right? That's how I walk away from that. But Blake, and we've seen him do this before, could have turned and taken that question and said, I don't think that was said. And then he could have argued the question, which is one of the things that Blake does quite often. He could have argued the question and said, I reject the premise of that question. He could have been combative. He could have not faced it. Instead, he took that question and the idea that the Jets culture is broken, the suggestion, which you cannot make the suggestion to a captain of a team that his culture is broken without that captain taking a direct hit from that, without the GM, without the coach, without the owner taking a direct hit, because those are your culture carriers. So what did he do? Rather than fighting back, he came out and he said, I'll own that. I'll own the idea that if there's something wrong with this culture, it's on me. And he went about the idea that he's trying to build the culture, and he kind of extended an olive branch and said, I hope other players are doing it too. I think that's his way of extending an olive branch within the room, saying, I want to build this culture. I want it to be better. If I'm here going forward, I want other people to join in with that. So I do think that there were messages, not just to us in the media, but to players inside that dressing room, right? So I do think that he handled that as good as it possibly could have been handled. Here's the interesting part about this. You talked about it. Are you going to get combative Blake, or are you going to get this Blake? One of the reasons I think Blake talked the way he did today is I think he was kind of forced into the open to talk about this stuff by the comments that we'd heard from players like Stastny and from Kyle Connor talking about culture, and from Nick Ehlers and Pierre-Luc Dubois talking about effort. There were too many guys not wearing letters on this team that were pointing out the issues that Blake refused to talk about. And so now he was kind of, I do feel he was backed into a corner. How do you not talk about these issues when everyone else on your team is openly talking about them? And so, and here's the other part about this that I think is really interesting. The question basically of leadership and the role it has played in where this team is this year. Blake tackled that question today and said, blame it on me. Jeff Hamilton was on a road trip with this team about a month ago, and everyone will remember this was the infamous Blake saying, what are we going to get in a pissing match interaction with Jeff Hamilton there. But Jeff basically asked the same question, what leadership had to do with what was happening. And Blake's response at that time was, it seemed like it was just dripping with self-pity. Well, when things are going good, you don't get any credit. When they're going bad, people pile it on your shoulders. So if you need to pile it on me, I think the fact that I'm coming out and speaking to the media speaks volumes, right? Same question, polar opposite answers. And this is the thing. I'm not even going to ask the question, which is the real Blake Wheeler, the one that spoke today so eloquently and did so in a way that it extended an olive branch to the people inside the organization, to the fans, saying to the fans that we're coming back to play for you and show you that we care. Is that the Blake Wheeler, or is it the combative Blake Wheeler who says he doesn't feel like he gets enough credit for what he does? To be honest, I don't care which of those is the real Blake Wheeler. The thing that kind of blows me away is Blake Wheeler can be the guy he was today. He's an extremely smart guy who can speak eloquently and can make it pop. And the fact that he chooses to go in the other direction so often when he's capable of doing what he did today blows my mind. Because if he did what he did today on a consistent basis, he would be one of the most well-spoken captains in the entire NHL. And yet so often he chooses to go in the other direction. And I do not understand why that choice is made. What he did today made him and the organization look far better. I believe that it puts the organization in a better place with the fans for him to talk like that. And one last time, the fact that he is so capable of going down this road and he chooses to go down the other one as often as he does entirely baffles me.
Yeah, he's a complex individual. We've learned that about him, covering him all 11 years. I would also say, too, I mean, just to harken back to the early days, Blake was one of the best people to talk to in the early years of the Jets. He was very emotional. He wore his heart on his sleeve all the time. And When he switched over to wearing a letter, he became a little bit more cautious in the media and a little bit less emotional. And I just think that, and again, I think that the volume of interviews that Blake has done over the years, not this year and not necessarily last year, but the cumulative volume is something that has impacted how Blake handles himself in the media at times. So Blake's also a guy that has, uses that. You and I talked about this off air. He has that Michael Jordan approach where there are slights that are real or perceived, right? I mean, he's a guy that is very driven, and sometimes he uses outside motivation to drive him. I've used this example before, and I don't know if I've said it on the show or not, but during that 2018 playoff series, I did a big feature on Blake Wheeler during the Minnesota Wild series where I caught up to his what Blake did in high school in grade 11. His high school at Breck won both the state hockey and football championships, and Blake was a tight end on that team. He was a pretty good player, really good actually. And I caught up with his coach at a prep school. He was in Philadelphia, I think. I did a phone interview with him, and that coach said so many complimentary things. And then during the conversation at one point, he said, "It looks like Blake made the right decision, wouldn't you say?" And I used the quote in the story. It was obviously a compliment to Blake. He was also saying Blake, if he wanted to, could have gone and played college football, maybe even played pro football as a 6'4" guy. But he was acknowledging that he made the right decision because he was an elite level hockey player, even though he was an excellent football player. And I can remember, I remember running into Blake in the room after the story was written, and Blake's interpretation was that he wasn't playing football at a high enough level, and that was totally not, like, that was one of those perceived slights, right? It was not a real slight at all. But he's a guy that uses different things for motivation. And again, that being confrontational with the media is not something he does for motivation. But this is again where kind of, Sean, where you and I have talked about this before too. There are some things where we ask some difficult questions towards Blake, and he doesn't think that it's any of the media's business, right? So that's why he's taken that combative approach. So, but again, and that's okay, that he's entitled to that opinion. But I mean, again, that also doesn't mean that some of the questions don't need to be asked. So, again, I thought it was important for him to set that tone. And I mean, we'll see what happens from here. But it's a big off season ahead. Blake knows it. I mean, I thought the other answer that kind of stood out was how he talked about, we'll see if management agrees with my interpretation, right? I mean, and he also later on, when he talked about, Kelly Moore had asked him about the perception of them being a young team that Blake has used on occasion. Blake said, I'm 35 years old and I don't have everything figured out yet. So that's why he thinks some of the younger guys, or even the guys in their mid-20s, he doesn't view them as older players, even though some of those guys are veterans in experience, even though they're, 25, 26, 27 years old.
Just quick one for you. Do you think Kyle Connor is the best scorer in Jets 2.0 history at this stage? Is it obvious to you?
I mean, he's going to be with number 45. Again, I mean, this is not a debate over who's a better scorer, Patrick Laine or Kyle Connor. The fact that Patrick Laine was able to score 44 as a 19-year-old was off the charts impressive. The fact that Kyle Connor has scored 44 this year and is approaching 90 points is absolutely tremendous. I mean, the thing to me that Kyle's really rounded out his game. And the biggest difference right now, Sean, between Patrick Laine and Kyle Connor is that Kyle Connor's consistency level is higher right now. There's no argument there. They can both go on incredible heaters, but the one thing about Patrick's game that he's still working on, and he's still a young player, is that he sometimes goes through cold stretches. We saw that when he was a member of the Winnipeg Jets, and we've seen it now in Columbus as well. The most impressive part about Kyle Connor's game is that he has not gone through an 8 or 10 game stretch, right? I think I off the top of my head, I don't remember. I think he might have had a 4 or 5 game stretch was his long, maybe 6 might be the max. But other than that, he's done a phenomenal job of being on the score sheet. And again, we know it's more than the score sheet, but Kyle Connor's ability to put the puck in the back of the net has been impressive. And the only bad news for him, I think Kyle Connor's going to win the Lady Byng, or he should, with only 4 penalty minutes this season, with the number of minutes he plays, including being on the penalty kill. The fact that he's been so incredibly consistent is the most important part about Kyle Connor's game this year. And the sad part for him, Sean, if he doesn't miss those 3 games because of COVID, I cannot imagine he doesn't hit 50. And again, it's incredible to be able to put up that many goals in the NHL. And again, shout out to Alex Ovechkin for having his 9th 50-goal season, with having the 2 goals last night against Vegas. And the fact that number 50 was a straight clapper was absolutely tremendous. As someone who appreciates the clapper.
Yeah. I just wanted to bring this one up here. So I don't know. Blue Thunder, who I've seen here before, comments, senseless drivel. You're going to have to be more specific.
He's talking about
when you
Wheeler,
make
I think, right? Is he not?
Okay. There you go. I wasn't sure. I thought he was talking about us, and I was going to say we have a lot of senseless drivel on here, so you're going to have to give us a little more of an idea of what you're talking about. But
I could be wrong.
I don't know. I will say this. About the Patrick Laine situation, the Kyle Connor situation. Kyle Connor is, I'm fairly confident is going to beat that. He's going to become the best single season scorer. You talked about him being more consistent as a scorer. That is entirely true as well. The one thing about Patrick Laine, though, if you remember that year he put up 44, he went ice cold in the last 10 games of the year. Do you remember that?
Right. Yes. Because everyone was asking him about, can you pass Ovi and win the Rocket Richard trophy?
Well, and he was right there with Ovi. I think they were tied at 41 goals at some point, and then Ovi just kept scoring at the same pace that they had both been scoring at. And a 19-year-old Patrick Laine froze up in a race with his hero, right? Like the guy who he used to go and get YouTube videos. So, I mean, I will say this. I think sometimes you forget the magnificence that you've witnessed over the years. I mean, like if you think about in 2018, the level that Blake Wheeler was playing at that time, and some of the things that Mark Scheifele has done, and, Connor Hellebuck in his years where he was just absolutely, like, I think I've said this before, we had a whole bunch of hometown hockeys one year, and Connor Hellebuck not only just didn't lose those games, he rarely allowed goals. It was absolutely outstanding. So we've seen some dominant hockey, and one of those things that we'd seen that we forget is a 19-year-old Patrick Laine scoring 44 goals. That's amazing as it is. But had he not got the jitters at the end of the season, you're talking about a kid at 19 who may have had 53 goals. So the thing that when you see Kyle Connor doing what he's doing this year scoring wise, it kind of makes you think to yourself, wow, like it, as amazing as what we're seeing, it's crazy that we've seen this movie before about a 19-year-old kid, and it was absolutely phenomenal stuff down the stretch there. Anything you want to add before we go?
On the totals there, Kyle Connor's longest cold streak this year was 5 games at the end of November, but he still had 2 assists during that stretch. Every other time he had been just gone a game or 2 without scoring. And again, for a team, like we talked about this before, I mean, this was the 38th time now, Sean, that the Jets scored 2 or fewer. They've only won 3 of those games. Kyle Connor has had such a massive percentage of the goals that they've scored, and so many of them have been important goals, Sean. His third period goals and his game winners are absolutely off the charts, right, this year? So that's another part about his game. 8 game-winning goals this year. I mean, the Jets have won 35 games. He had the game winner in 8 of them. I mean, he's been a clutch scorer for the Jets. So, I mean, he's had an incredible season, and, you're right. I mean, it should be celebrated.
I was going to say this with Rob Mahoney. Rob says, will we ever find out why Laine really wanted out? Is it as simple as wanting to play with Scheifele? Like, I mean, you can get into the details of all the stuff that happened, but like, it's pretty obvious at this point. Like the culture that we're talking about, that the Jets have, was not a culture that Patrick Laine jived with. Patrick Laine made it clear early on he wanted to stay in Winnipeg for a long time. He liked the city. By the end of it, the relationship was not a strong relationship, let's put it that way. And he was more interested in pursuing a new relationship outside of the city. You can draw your own conclusions from that. Maybe one day the stories will come out. He's clearly not interested in talking about it. It's one of the things that I have to say, for a young man I'm surprised. I guess I shouldn't say I'm surprised, because from the very beginning, Patrick Laine has conducted himself in that manner. But as young as he is, you could think that he could come out, and there was a lot of fans, and there's clearly going to be fans in the chat room who don't like Patrick Laine, who say good riddance. There were people booing when he came back. When you ask out of a city, you're going to get flack for doing that. And a young man could respond to that by saying, well, this is why I want to out. You want to know why I want it? Well, here's the reason. Here's the reason. Here's the reason. He kept that between himself and the Winnipeg Jets. It looks like they're intent on doing that. So, I mean, you'll hear dribs and drabs of stories and stuff like that. But when it comes down to it, I'm not so sure, unless someone writes a book when it's all said and done, you may get that stuff, but I don't think that's coming anytime soon. Anyways, let's shut this down here, Ken. It's been a fun day. Boy, oh boy, if you haven't checked out our long form podcast and you've got some time, check it out. James Patrick, I was blown away, just blown away. You want to talk about an NHL head coach in waiting? What a guy. And you want to talk about building team culture? Ken, you asked some questions that open things wide up. Let's just say this. Jets fans, you're out there listening right now. I know that dressing room culture is a big issue for you right now, and it's top of mind because of what's happened with the Winnipeg Jets this year. You want to hear James Patrick's take on building a proper culture inside the dressing room. It is good stuff. Kenny elicited a lot of good stuff from him. Great job with that, Kenny. And John Shabbat was phenomenal as well. Check it out. It's a good one. It's a really good one. And why don't you, if you're checking stuff out, why don't you go check out all our merch at www.shopsportsnet.store. T-shirts, mugs, water bottles, you name it, we've got it there. Go check it out. We've already made the decision that half of all our profits that we bring in, Ken, are going to the Winnipeg Humane Society. I've been taking steps behind the scenes to get that done. We love the local support that we get, and we want to support local as well. Lastly, before we go, just wanted to thank our sponsors, Cambrian and the Johnston Group. We've said this before, with no sports talk radio in town, our people like ourselves, Hustler, the Illegal Curve Boys, we're doing our best to try and fill that void. And it's companies and sponsors like Cambrian and the Johnston Group that are investing in this conversation in town. We very much appreciate it. We hope you do too. Thank you so much for joining us. Come check us out tomorrow. Special edition of the Kenny and Renny Show, a Winnipeg Ice version as they launch their series. Game 1 tomorrow against the Prince Albert Raiders. We will be there from 5 to 6 o'clock. Come check us out, everybody. We've enjoyed the time we spent with you today. Let's hope we can do some more of it tomorrow. See everybody later.